This tool right here has been used by myself and others to predict when we're going to likely experience a massive turnaround in this crypto market, going from bearish to bullish. But there is a very important thing you got to understand, because there's a good chance you probably own altcoins, and let's just say the time horizon here for altcoins are going to be a little bit different from these dates. Let me explain to you in this video why, some of the key things you have to keep in consideration here, and what we can likely expect for the near term. At the very end of the video as well, I'm going to give you my personal thoughts on what to expect. So don't forget, make sure you hit a like on this video if you find yourself enjoying it, and make sure you are subscribed as well. Let's begin. This is the global M2 money supply. Essentially, it's us tracking how much money is sloshing around the world. And Bitcoin, well, Bitcoin and crypto have really synchronized to this because crypto and Bitcoin particularly is a global asset. So this actually turns around for the better. This massive downtrend we're experiencing now, yeah, we have a really good flip here. A flip so big, we'll likely see a jump to about $120,000-ish when this happens. Now, here's the thing though, okay? There are two possible scenarios for this, around March 24 and April 21st. The reason being is because these two charts, both the green and the red, while they're both the global M2 money supply, one of them is on a 72-day lead and one is a 105-day lead, meaning that's how far apart it is or in front of Bitcoin. Now, right now, they're both pretty correlated to Bitcoin's price. We just don't know which one is more correlated. So these are two dates many people, including myself, have pointed out here for things to get better, but better for Bitcoin. The thing with altcoins, guys, is they're a little bit different to following simply the global M2 money supply. While they might follow global liquidity, like Bitcoin, the difference here is that they are the furthest point along the risk curve, which means, as you'll soon see, investors don't like throwing their money into altcoins unless they are certain the markets are actually in good standing. So in my opinion, while this is fantastic, I think we need to expect the best, but prepare for the worst. And that's what this video should hopefully allow you to do. Let me remind you, global liquidity going up is fantastic for Bitcoin. It will also help trail up altcoins. But true alt season only comes when things like this happen, when we see a continuation of interest rates dropping. This is the PPI recently fell down. CPI also came in cool and expected as well. All fantastic stuff. But there is an unfortunate situation still playing out here. Hedge funds are selling off their global stocks at their fastest pace in 4 years. As a result, the S&P 500 has declined at 9% from its all-time high, which is the fastest drop since back in the global pandemic 4 years ago. Hedge funds are selling. Be very well aware of this. Again, if no one's buying stocks or if the hedge funds are scared, okay, what does that mean for crypto, which is again the furthest point along the possible risk curve, well and truly out from even Bitcoin? Well, the reason mainly is because there are fears of a recession, okay? And people asking themselves, including me, whether this is deliberate or not. Now, you would assume it would be deliberate, but there are people that are questioning this, like this guy on Reddit. I don't think the current administration is so calculating, but if it really is true, then it feels like a 5D chess move. Okay, the idea here being that Trump wants to start trade wars deliberately, crashing the economy, and force the central bank to reduce interest rates the hard way. So articles like this are coming up all around crypto at the moment, asking, hey, is this a part of a 5D chess move? Is this all deliberate to bring rates down and therefore short-term pain with long-term reward? And as we know, Trump is willing to do whatever it takes to bring down interest rates, even if it does involve a recession. So as you may be able to be picking up from this point in time, what I'm hinting at here is, yes, global liquidity is going up, but you're not going to have people buying altcoins when there is a proper, genuine reason for them not to go and gamble a bunch of money on fake digital coins when there's a possible recession in the air. Here is a really interesting video I want you guys to have a good listen to here regarding Trump's tweets.
This is what he tweeted first thing this morning. The Federal Reserve should get our interest rates down to 0 or less and we should then start to refinance our debt. Interest costs could be brought way down, while at the same time substantially lengthening the term. So restructuring our debt or restructure our debt here, I guess it would take care of this deficit problem.
Believe it or not, that was not this year. That was his first term, like over 4 years ago, back in 2019. Now, at this point in time, back in his first 4 year term, markets were going up, and he was actually imposing, as this just showed you, the same thing. His intentions were the same in terms of, bringing interest rates down. He was implementing tariffs. And again, there was that sort of massive deficit that he was trying to expunge. But of course, things are a lot different this time. Rather than being up 5% back then at this current time, we're down 8%. So again, just all of this being said, keep in the back of your mind, a call for alt season or a call in global liquidity going up, which is an immediate effect for alts, doesn't always directly happen. Okay, so be careful. Now, this chart here I showed on a recent video. Okay, it's the S&P, Bitcoin in orange and black respectfully, of course, overlaid to show they are very synchronized. And also 2 Fed data points here. We've got the balance sheet in blue and the interest rate here in purple. Now, all I want to tell you guys, and I made the point on a video a few days back, was that what we kind of want to see here is this happen again this time around. Now, to cause this massive spike here, to going into QE, right? Interest rates falling here from up at about 1.5% all the way down here to 0.05%, almost at zero, okay? Whilst the Fed began buying, okay, to cause that, it was, the result of that pandemic, right? Markets took a massive tank, and then of all of this, this change in monetary policy actually caused that massive bull run, not just for, Bitcoin here in orange, but also for stocks. That is what Trump, I believe, is trying to do. We know in June, the Fed is going to be stopping QT. They're going neutral. Maybe there's going to be talk, hopefully soon, of QE. That'd be fantastic, but they're at least going neutral. Now, the interesting thing is, why I say that we could be a mild recession here to cause this or barely avoid it is because Amit here says something very interesting. The key is if they can get the Fed to cut rates before the recession and not once it becomes obvious we're actually in a recession. We don't need to have an official recession. I think the markets right now are possibly pricing in that becoming a reality. Or a lot of these prediction markets are also indicating that we could have, there's a high likelihood of having a recession. Now, again, the reason why I'm simply saying this is because it's short-term pain, I believe, induced pain, obviously, here, for, I think, the overall long-term success of this market, or at least whilst Trump is in office. And let's not forget, by June, the Fed has to refinance about 70% of $9 trillion in the deficit, right? And what they owe, the debt. So this is, I think, one of the main reasons why you'll come to articles like this where, people are hinting at the possibility of the rate drop because there is such a large amount of multi-trillions of dollars worth of debt to be refinanced. So it definitely makes sense for Trump to be considering this, and it would kind of work out really well around June-ish. But again, let's just have a look and wait and see. I would not be banking on my altcoins personally pumping until Bitcoin is clearly up and in a market where things like this are peaking, all right? This is the business cycle in the United States. This is ISM's PMI index. Surveys a bunch of businesses in the US over the last month and says, hey, how well are you guys doing? Are people actually buying your stuff? Think about it. If no one's buying your products on a mass scale, the economy is slowing down. Okay, if these guys are noticing a tick up and people are coming in and spending money and stuff, of course, it's going to be good for the economy, or the economy is booming. It's a pulse on the economy. And as I've said many, many times, we want to see this go up. Actually, as you can see here, it synchronizes more and more to the highs. You can see April 21, December 2017, November 2013 here for the all-time highs in Bitcoin's price. And over time synchronizes, you can see how unsynced it is here. But then as it sort of develops, it becomes more synchronized with Bitcoin because, like I said, Bitcoin is a global asset. And of course, the US is one of the biggest economies in the world. So it's synchronizing to the US business cycle here, which may land us in like sort of the red zone over here. That's if you follow this sort of repeating cycle here for the United States economy, right? Where we kind of have, roughly speaking, about 3.5 to 4 year cycles every single time from low to low, low to low, low to low. Looks like we could be around here, maybe around mid 2026. To maybe start of 2027. That's worst case. I don't really think so. I think we'll have an explosion here sometime soon. Obviously, that's what Trump does want. But this is so important to assess because if you think about it, All right, we can't expect people to invest in some of this fake digital money if they're not already willing enough to go into a store like IKEA and spend money on stuff they don't actually need. So we want this to go up, and that's going to have a carry-on effect to altcoins. But until that happens, you will not find people delving out of their personal risk curve when things are tightening. It doesn't work like that. So the next ISM PMI update for the US comes out on April 2nd for this month. That's a very key, important time for you to be clued in and looking at this. Obviously, the tariffs are a bit of a wild card. Tariffs, induce more inflation. Inflation is going to bring up interest rates, so it's going to be weird how to see that dynamic, of course, works. But of course, I'm not the administration, and I would assume that they are playing some sort of 5D chess that unfortunately us simple-minded people in aggregation just can't get our heads around because we don't know the communication lines that are happening behind the scenes. Now, this is interesting, right? This shows us the global business cycle. So I showed you here moments ago the US business cycle. Well, this is still the US business cycle here. You can see they've been floating around expansion now for a while. All right, that's them floating around here. They've been, again, this index score of 50 here is like the baseline. So they've been kind of flirting with baseline for a while now. But having a look, if I click all here, most countries are more so towards contraction. So like most countries essentially are underneath this index score here. All right, they're in contraction, which is not obviously good because, like I said, altcoins and crypto as a whole are a global, currency or commodity, whatever you want to kind of use them as. Now, this is also important as well. This is the MSCI World Business Cycle. I just want to take your attention quickly here to 2017 and 2021, when this score was at 10.5 and 20 respectfully. Now, you can see in 2024, we're actually negative. We're at negative 5, and we haven't gone up much since around the end of 2024. So we pretty much, at best case, break even, if not in the negative still. We have a long way to go, guys. All right. And again, the only way you have true alt season is when that happens. Now, people have alt season mistaken. They think alt season is when, like this can happen in the 3-year interim periods, red, yellow, and blue zones. We've seen alts kind of half pop off here based on this chart over the last few years. And that's not the case. Actual alt season, as when someone says the words alt season is in the last 12 months, at least with the 4-year cycle, in pure euphoria, where this is alts versus Bitcoin season being in the lower half of this, alts being in the higher half, when Bitcoin severely bleeds to alts. Like you can see back here in 2018, alts gained 400% on top of Bitcoin, which actually led to some pretty nutty numbers. Okay, that was like this. That was a 3,300% gain in altcoin market cap. Well, back in January 2021 to the end of 2021, alts gained 400% yet again. What did that look like? That was 8.5x. Actually, 9.5x, my bad. Now, for this time, I'm expecting us not to do that much because Bitcoin is a much larger asset. Okay, much more liquidity in it. It's adopted almost truly at this point. So we can see here that I would only expect us to max out at about 100% or a 2x gain alts versus Bitcoin in true alt season. But what that would actually mean in terms of how much money that's looking at in terms of invested in alts is at least $2 trillion. That is a monumental growth because while it's only like a 2.5x from here, what that looks like is, you can see at this point, that's a double of what $12 trillion market cap we can forecast right now would give our top altcoins. So what that pretty much means is the top 90 altcoins are going to have around, let's just say, circa $1.8 trillion invested in them. Now, look at how much there is right now. There ain't much. The highest coin here is Pi and 11 billion market cap. All right, and if you just total up all these numbers here, okay, the lowest being 500 million, that would look something like the lowest being worth at least $2 or $3 billion. At least. So it's going to be a lot of money here if it happens, right? If it happens. So I do think it will, but I think alt season will only be created when things are cleared up, all right? When essentially, hopefully, this comes true where we don't actually have a recession, but rates are cut, the Fed starts buying again, or at least we're in neutral. We don't need to be in pure QE, all right, where the Fed's buying. We can actually be neutral as far as I've seen. 2018 was neutral, all right? The whole bull run there, we never had QE like the last cycle. But we do need, obviously, global liquidity to still go up, and we need the business cycles at large to be expanding, not contracting. You know, guys, I'm still expecting something like this to occur. I'm not bearish, by the way, but like I said, I'm actually expecting the best, preparing for the worst. So for altcoins, like this is what happened back in the last pandemic, right? This is kind of the only really example we have here to compare what might happen here with last time. But if this does happen, you know, this was a large cap. This was BNB. Went from 4 billion market cap, fell down 75%. Okay, went sideways. People were underwater for the most part for 114 days, over 3 months. But from the top here to this top, it took 200 days. Now, H-bar, so smaller coins in this cycle might take a whole year to break those recent highs. But once they do, as you can see here, crazy multiples happen. And don't get me wrong, like we're not starting fresh now. Like we're not expecting, or I'm not expecting a 75% drop from these numbers. You can see coins like BNB have already fallen 36%, and coins like Render, more notably, already 78%. So some coins have weathered it better than others. This is why I'm mostly in large caps and why you haven't seen me over the last 2 years talk a lot about the smaller caps or meme coins or micro caps, because in situations like this, I mean, these are the ones that bleed the most. Okay, so yes, this can definitely happen and this can definitely fall down even further from here, but we're not starting a 75% crash possibly from here. We've already started that. It may go a little bit lower. Most of these coins are actually at very strong levels of support as well. You know, I had the question asked me in the private community today, Kyron, like, why don't you just buy altcoins? Well, first of all, I can't. I got all my money. Unfortunately, I'm literally out of money. The dip kept dipping. But if I had money, knowing what I know now, it'd be a Bitcoin play. I'd be going into Bitcoin, waiting for Bitcoin to break an all-time high here with global liquidity. Alts will likely suffer along that timeline. Even in the best case, let's just say everything like turns out for the better, no recession called, you know, markets flip back again, and we have interest rates falling, economy is expanding, and all the works pretty much. I see alts not really catching up to Bitcoin so quickly. So basically, if you put in 10K into Bitcoin now, you know, pull out your 15K, pay your taxes, throw back that extra money into altcoins, and you're in a much better position. Again, worst comes to worst, you're in Bitcoin. Bitcoin will always go up, I do believe, and it won't, you know, sort of suffer the same fate that alts will if we truly do, for example, go into a bear market. So that's my thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think down below, and make sure that you do, you know, adhere to the global liquidity cycle. Like the M2 money supply is so important in all of this. But don't use it as your barometer for altcoins, because while alts will definitely, you know, benefit from it, it's mainly a Bitcoin thing at this stage. Alts rely on people being more degen than just Bitcoin. Talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.